Hello and welcome back to the final video for making space rocks in drag and drop. So this time we're just putting the finishing touches on our project. So first up, I want to get our game object to spawn in the asteroids while we're playing the game. So we don't have any more need for these, so let's just delete them. And now in our game object, I want to spawn these asteroids in the event, down in other, that the room starts. And of course I only mean a specific room, just the game room. So I don't want it to be creating asteroids if we're in the start or the game over or the win room. So I do just want to check if the room is equal to the game room, then we're going to be creating an object. So let's type create, and right here is create instance. So let's just drag that in, and we want to create asteroids. And we're going to be creating them at a certain XXYY, let's just put. So we haven't created these variables yet, but we'll be using some random functions to find the variables for these, because I want to kind of make it all around the boundaries of the room, but not right on top of the player. And we can leave the layer as instances because we do want to make it in the instances layer, and we can leave target. So now, for XX, which is the X location, I want it to first choose to make it in either the first third of the room or the last third of the room. So I'm going to have it flip that coin and say choose. And I'll just say 0 or 1, and we'll save that as choice. And we'll just tick temporary. And now, if choice is equal to 0, then we'll make it in the first third. So let's now randomly choose a value, an integer between 0, which is the start of the room, and room width times 0.3. And I'm going to save that as the variable that we'll use to create the object. But if choice is not equal to 0, then else we are going to, let's just copy and paste this and attach it to the else. So else choice must be 1. Then let's just make it in room width times 0.7, so as the minimum, and then the maximum is just the entire width of the room, so between those two variables. There we go, so it's going to do either of those, and now we just need to do the same for the Y. So let's just copy in our choice here, and we want to roll this again, just so the X and Y aren't dependent on each other, so we're going to do another choose, and we can use the same variable here because we're done with it now. And again, we're just going to set up this if check, except instead of XX, we're going to use YY, and instead of room width, we're going to use room height. And again, we know that ours are the same if you've used the dimensions 500 by 500, but if you haven't, then you will need to be specific here. And also copy that else and drag it into the correct place. And change those to height. And YY. Alright, so now it should be creating them around the room. But this is only going to be creating one asteroid. How about we repeat all of that? So just press Shift and click. So now we're highlighting all of them, and we can move all of these to here. And we'll repeat this 6 times. Now let's give that a test. And press Enter to start. There we go, and it created 6 asteroids around the room. Alright, so that will spawn the asteroids at the start, but now we need it to continuously spawn an asteroid every few seconds. So for this, we're going to set an alarm. So add event alarm, and this is a special kind of event that we can set to be triggered after a certain amount of time. So for example, in the room start of the game room, we can then set the alarm, so let's type in alarm, set the alarm countdown of alarm 0, so that's this alarm right here, to go off after 60 steps. So this is steps, not seconds, and remember there are 60 steps in a second, so this will be actually 1 second. So that means after the game starts, we spawn the 6 asteroids here. 1 second later, it's going to spawn an additional asteroid. Well, that's what we're going to set up in here. So now what we're going to do is spawn the asteroids actually right at the boundaries, so not into the room at all, right at the boundaries. So for this to work, either X or Y is going to have to be 0, or the total room width or room height. So we can spawn it up the top and then any X coordinate along the top, or down the bottom and any X coordinate down the bottom. And then the same is going to go for down the 2 sides, where we can make Y anything and X is going to be 0 or the room width. So we're going to have to do something quite similar to what we did in the room start. So first, we are going to make that choice of if we're going down the left or right side. So we're going to choose between 0 and 1 again, right? So we're just going to flip a coin, save this as choice, and then if choice is equal to 0, then let's say that we're going to have it be spawned either at the left or right sides. And then if this is not true, then we will go down the top or bottom. So if we're going down the sides, then X is going to be either 0 or room width. So we're going to make another choice. Choose XX is going to be room width or 0. And then the Y is going to be anything at all between 0 and the room height. And we'll save that into YY. And then now, let's just copy and paste these down to here. Put them in the else. Because now we'll be going down the top or bottom. So we want YY to be either the top or bottom. And then XX is going to be anything along the top or bottom. So 0 or room width. And then the last thing to do is just create the object. So regardless of what this choice is and what we're doing down here, make sure that this is not part of the if or else, so we'll take it out of this. I'm going to create an asteroid at the XXY location that we've set up here in the instances layer, just like that. And so we'll just create one of those asteroids for this alarm event. So now we've set it off once in the room start here, but throughout the game, we actually want this alarm to keep going off every few seconds. So I'm going to have to remember to reset this alarm right here. So let's set it off again, maybe after 4 seconds. So what we could do is type 60 times 4, so that would be 4 seconds, or we could type room speed, because remember, room speed is equal to 60. Now, one more thing that we should do is just check that because OBJ game is persistent, this alarm might be set to go off after we have transitioned to another room. So say because we've won or because we've lost. And I don't want to keep making asteroids in the wrong room, so I'm just going to check up here if the room that we're in, and now we're going to use this not, so is not equal to the RM game, then what we're going to do is exit this entire block, right? So what this will do is if this is found to be true, so if we're not in the game room, then it's going to exit this entire thing, so it's not going to perform anything after this point. So it's not going to reset the alarm, and it's not going to spawn another asteroid. It's just going to exit the whole thing. So let's give that a test. And before we do, let's just set this back down to 0 and our lives to 3. So let's just check if those asteroids are spawning. There we go. So if we just wait a few seconds in here, we should see that new asteroids are spawning around the room. Yep, that's starting to look good. So our room is starting to fill up. Great. Now, one other thing that we haven't done yet is restarted the room when the player dies one time. So how about we have this room restart 1 second after the player's death? So we might want to create another alarm in the game object, so alarm 1, and this will restart the room. And then in the player object, we can just set that alarm. So we're going to have to apply this to the game object and set its alarm, but alarm 1 this time, to go off after, let's say, 1 second, so 60 steps. So let's try that again. And if we die, there we go, so it's restarted. All right. So now the last thing that we could do is just add some sound effects to our game. So there are some great online tools for creating sound effects for games. Have a look at them and have a go at creating your own sounds. Or you could just use mine. So I'm going to just bring up sounds and drag them into my project. There we go. So I have just a few sound effects for shooting and dying, for example, and I also have a background song to play. So in the game object, I'm going to play that song at the start of my game room. So we want to play a sound, so we'll just type audio. And now if the room is equal to the game room, right here, then we can just play sound music song. And yes, I do want it to loop. So that means once it's finished, it's going to start again. But since we can restart the room when the player is dying. So remember, we set that up in alarm 1. I do also just want to check if the song is already playing. So if the game is already started and the song is already playing, then what I'm going to do is just get it to stop that song and then play it again from the start. So that way we're not going to get it playing over itself. Alright, so that should play the music at the start of the game. And now in the step event, in here, let's add the win and lose sounds. So if we win the game, then I'm going to play the win sound. And if I lose, we'll play that one. And we won't tick loop for those. We just want them to play once. Alright, now when we shoot, I want to play the zap noise. So let's go to OBJ ship, spacebar, and again, let's play an audio sound, the zap. And we'll also add for when we crash with the asteroid, let's play the die sound. And I'll also play when we blow up an asteroid with the bullet. And let's do hurt when the bullet blows up the asteroid. Alright, and really that should be it. So let's give the game a final run. So when we hit enter, our music should start and we should be hearing all of our sound effects. There we go. Alright, so everything's working. And now before we finish, you might have noticed that when we play the game, everything seems to be spawning in the exact same way when we first start. And that's because when we've been using those random functions, it's not actually random technically every time. GameMaker has actually just made a random seed for the game to use in testing so that it's easier to debug, and it uses the same one every time. But if you want to change that seed every time you run the game, then you could just add the randomize function in the create of the game. And then once we're done with the game, while you can't export the game just with the trial license, you can export it if you have the creator or developer licenses. So these will allow you to publish to Windows or Mac. So we can come over here and just create executable, package it as an installer or a zip, and then we can save it somewhere. And once that's done, you should be able to share that with others. Alright, so that's pretty much it. There's a lot more you could still add to this game, so hopefully you can build off of this foundation and make a more complicated game. But we've come to the end of the series. So congratulations on making it this far, and for finishing Space Rocks. I hope you enjoyed the series, and maybe I'll see you in another tutorial. Until then, see you and have fun making games.